Welcome to Trouble with Tish. I am Tish, and I be Trouble. And if you are a returner, welcome back.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the past.
Alright, it is a Mask Monday. This is actually a very special Mask Monday, though. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody, this is a collab with the Beauty Ninjas. The playlist for all of the other beautiful Ninja Sisters will be below in the description box. Please go check them out and see what they have going on their Mask Mondays. Now, I was having a hard time trying to figure out what to do during Mask Mondays, and I was talking to Sue, and she said, well, why don't you just read a poem or read a book or something? And I thought, well, I was thinking about doing that at one point, so I might as well give it a try. So, if you see this, Sue had a great idea. If you don't see this, I suck at reading on camera, and it didn't go well. But we have this Biodance Biocollagen Real Deep Mask, and it says to leave it on for 3 to 4 hours. So I figured, okay, well, 3 to 4 hours. Nobody wants to sit here for 3 to 4 hours. But I can sit here for 3 to 4 hours and read my book. So, we're going to put this on, and we're going to do several Mask Mondays in a row. Hopefully this goes well, and you'll be seeing this. Or at least I can edit it well enough. I'm going to put the mask on. I'll be right back. Alright, so this is what we are looking like with our mask. To start off with, it is supposed to all dissolve into my skin and become transparent. We shall see if that works very well, or if not, if it doesn't. So we're going to put this over it. Oh, actually, I'm going to put that up so it's not hanging down and bugging me. Alright, now we have our Egger suit mask on, and we are going to start reading. Okay, so I chose The Rise of the Deva'Shi, a Chronicle of Partholon by Jennifer Alice Provost. This is the book. And I'm going to read a chapter and do another Mask Monday where I read a chapter. Chapter 1. Again the sun rises. I watch from my balcony as I do every morning as the sun greets the earth with his eternal embrace. There are no words to describe my happiness as I watch the daily ritual, for it means I'm home. I was once so far from home, I forgot who I was, where I was from, even that I was human. I began my journey as a frightened child, doggedly pursued by those who would seek to eradicate my family, yet I persevered. No, I triumphed as I walked through this world and into legend. A smile crosses my face as I think back to the day my life and the lives of those dear to me changed forever. I fought to be released from the clutches of destiny even as others conspired to destroy me, drive me mad, or imprison me in a strange land. Somehow I survived, and every trial did indeed make me stronger. In time, with effort to harm me, led only to their own demise. I look down from my perch into the courtyard, and I am reminded of the day my long journey began. I turn my face to the breeze and let its cool fingers take me away with my memories. I am Latera, and this is my story. I had been all of 10 summers old, first born to King Harold and Queen Lady Slava of Ganera. I lived the charmed existence that all royal children do, doted on by my parents and many nursemaids. I was too young to have any courtly duties assigned to me, so my days were spent playing with my sisters and the other children who resided in the castle. I wanted for nothing. I never touched anything rough or hurtful, and only pleasant words reached my ears. I had no idea of how idyllic my first years had been, or that they would ever change. One summer morning, I sat on the castle lawn making daisy chains with my sisters when Sasha began to wander toward the pond. I felt especially protective of my youngest sibling, and I called to her to make sure all was well. "Tara," a small voice said in reply. Sasha had a hard time learning my name and frequently garbled it into something that sounded nothing like Latera, but I loved my baby sister and did not mind. I followed her voice and found her playing with her reflection in the pond. I sat next to her, and as I looked into the water, I noticed how we were so alike, yet so different. She, like our sisters, Aaliyah and Janae, looked like the king, while I had the long red curls of my mother's mother. All four of us shared the same pale blue eyes, also attributed to our father. She giggled and her curls bobbed in the sunlight. "Pretty!" she exclaimed, pointing to the ripples on the surface. I looked closer and realized that we were not watching ripples on the surface. The water was swirling, as if stirred by an unseen hand. Sasha leaned closer to the edge and I yanked her away. "No, it's not right," I yelled, and I pulled her back from the water's edge. She was crying. I thought at my harsh words, but when I turned back to the pond, I saw that the swirling water was now dark smoke and was rising into the air. "Sasha, run!" I shrieked as I pushed her back even farther. Something caught me and I was dragged back into the whirlwind. I was spinning, but my feet no longer touched the ground. I screamed and screamed, but I could not hear my own voice. The last image I saw was my beautiful baby sister sobbing as the castle guards came running to our aid. They were too late for me. I was gone. I awoke, feeling bruised all over. I was lying on a cold, damp dirt floor that gave off the sweet smell of decay. As I gathered my wits about me, I wondered how I could have ended up inside, and several aches made me question if I had been thrown down like a sack of flour. When I looked up, I saw that I was surrounded by unfamiliar figures. "Who are you?" croaked a woman near the front. She looked very old, older than the oldest person I'd ever seen, and was clad in a shapeless gray cloak. I stood and mustered all of the royal dignity I could. "I am Latera, firstborn of Harold and Lady Slava, heir to the kingdom," I proclaimed. I believed with the innocence of a child that surely these people would assist me once they knew who I was. The old hag chuckled. "That will not help you here. We did not even want you. We wanted the golden one." Her black eyes glinted as she mentioned Sasha. Golden babies can fetch a high price among my kind. I looked around the room to the people in the shadows. There were as few as 3, maybe as many as 10. The room was so dark, and I could not tell where the shadows ended and the walls began. A small fire burned against the far wall, which was the only light. There were rough wooden benches filled with books and bowls and things I could not identify, and the room had the acrid stink of smoke and herbs. "Please, where am I? How did I get here?" My royal conviction had left me, and I became a scared little girl. "You are in the realm of fairy," a male voice rumbled from the shadow. He stepped forward, and I saw that he wore the same gray cloak as the woman. Now that my eyes had adjusted to the darkness, I saw that all wore those gray cloaks. I wondered where they were from, for they were surely no groups in Ganera that wore such things and congregated in blackness. The man's hood was pulled low over his face, and he seemed to have a hunch as he lumbered forward. "Maleka opened the door to snatch the golden baby. You were caught instead." He glared at the old woman. Apparently, her spell was not as strong as she claimed, for it collapsed as soon as you came through. I stared at the man. "But how am I to get home?" My hands started to shake, and I fought to keep my tears from falling. I had never before been out of Ganera. In fact, I had hardly ever been outside the castle walls. The man's face cracked in an evil grin. "Home? We still need a child for our spells. You will have to do." The people rumbled with laughter. I suddenly realized that I was to be sacrificed, or worse, and fear gripped me with its icy fingers. I looked around for the door, a window, anything that would help me escape. I saw a hide covering something against the wall, and I hoped that it was a portal out of this dank prison. I grabbed a dagger from a nearby bench, and I clumsily brandished it as I backed toward the hide. "You will not harm me," I cried, and they responded with more laughter. 2 of the shadow people moved towards me as if they would pounce like a cat on its prey. I bolted out into the night through the hide-covered door, and I heard the man grumble, "Let her go. We will find her in the morning, begging for food." I plunged into the strange night and ran as fast as I was able to. I looked at the sky and saw that the stars were not in their familiar patterns. I saw the moon through the treetops, and it glowed red. I realized that the horrible man had not lied to me, and I really was in a different world. I ran and ran until I collapsed, crawling up against a tree for the relative safety of its massive trunk. Well, there are trees here, I thought. That is something familiar. The ground was spongy, like a thick moss, and I sank into it like a feather bed. Fortunately, the night was warm, as I only had my simple playdress to protect me. I curled up between the gnarled old tree roots as I clutched my stolen dagger and prayed for this nightmare to end. When I awoke the next morning, I could not remember why I was outside. Then the memory of the horrible night before came rushing back. While I was terrified of this new realm, I was also hungry, and my stomach overruled my head as I set out in search of breakfast. I came across some mottled green and purple berries that were sweet, and I ate all that I could pick. Once my belly was full, I again hoped that the man had lied, and I was still near my home. I walked through the trees, trying to move in the opposite direction from the cottage until I reached a small clearing. I looked up in an attempt to gauge my direction from the sun, but all my hope died and sank into the pit of my stomach. There were 2 suns, a great one that took up most of the sky, and a small one following in its wake. My worst fears confirmed, I stumbled in shock and fell to the ground. I was too filled with despair to cry, so I sat and considered my situation. I was in a strange land, and the only people I had met wanted to harm me. However, for all their harsh words, they had not tried to follow me, and as far as I could determine, I was alone in the woods. I remembered what my father told me, that for every one bad person there were 100 good people, and if you treat someone well, they would do the same. With newfound resolve, I rose and kept on my journey through the woods looking for those good people I desperately hoped to meet. I trekked through the woods for days before I saw another being. Even the forest creatures gave me wide berth, and I only occasionally saw a bird fly overhead. I had lost count of the days when the thick trees at last gave way to a gentle meadow. At the edge of the meadow I saw a small village of thatched cottages and wood-fenced yards, and again my heart leapt. I crept closer to watch the village before I ventured into their midst, and saw that while they looked human overall, their ears had a gentle point to them, and their eyelids and brows were slanted. They did indeed resemble the fairies I had heard tales of in the nursery. I watched them for the rest of the day, and I tried to plan how I would introduce myself. The sun set, and the night became much cooler than the ones I had spent sleeping among the trees. As my teeth chattered, I gathered up my courage and made my way to the village to look for shelter. I followed a narrow road of packed dirt, which led me to a square with 3 edifices clustered around a crossroad. I recognized one as an inn, another as a stable, and the other I assumed must belong to the local lord or overseer of the area. Light and laughter emanated from the inn, and while I was desperate for a hot meal and a friendly face, I did not have any coins to pay for a room. I turned to the stable, which was adjacent to the inn, and decided I would find a quiet corner to sleep in. As I burrowed into the hay of a vacant stall, I made up my mind to rise early and formally present myself to the overseer, who would surely know how to notify my father and of my whereabouts, and smiled, thinking that better days were surely ahead. I awoke, long after both those suns had risen, to find 2 people standing over me. The woman, who was short but quite round, wore a plain brown dress with a blue apron and wrung her hands profusely, and the man was dressed in a tan shirt that pulled across his large belly and brown pants. He seemed a great deal calmer than his counterpart, and looked on me with kind eyes. "How did you come to be in my stable?" he asked. "I'm sorry," I replied. I did not mean to intrude, but I was so cold, and I have no money to obtain a room at the inn. I will repay you, however you see fit, my lord." He chuckled and rested his hands on his girth. "You should have come inside. We can always make room." His smile was so welcoming I almost forgot the bad events of the past few days. He told me that he was called Ingvar, and that he and his mate Elma ran the inn and stable in this village, called Brennus, and I was in a land called Partholon. They set me down to a hot breakfast, and I relayed my story to them between mouthfuls of food. I had not realized how hungry I was, but after subsisting on nothing but berries for so many days, I was nearly starved. They were taken aback at my story of the sorcerers that kidnapped me, but assured me that they could not harm me again, as I had been traveling away from the cottage for at least 6 days. I asked if they knew how I could go home. but they did not know of anyone who possessed the skill to move between realms. Not only had they no knowledge of Ganera, I was the first human to make my way to Brennus in hundreds of years, and if it hadn't been for the wonderful sweet cakes they were filling me with, that news would have caused me to burst into tears. Alma, who had become much more distraught than I, put her arms around me and promised that I was welcome to stay with them for as long as I had the need. After breakfast, Alma prepared me for a hot bath and somehow produced clothing and shoes that fit me perfectly. My play dress and slippers had suffered greatly during my time in the woods, and I was grateful for the new garments. The dress she gave me was a brown and green design, quite similar to her own, and as I ran my hand over the coarse fabric, I wondered if I would ever again wear the fine dress of a princess. The shoes were sturdy leather, quite well tanned and smooth to the touch. Once I had finished my bath, Elma and Ingvar set up one of the rooms for me, and I stayed in that room for the rest of the autumn and all winter. When spring returned, so did the travelers, and I moved to the stable as Ingvar and Elma were poor and needed to earn money from every room they could. During my time in the stable, I cared for the horses that belonged to the paying guests. I knew very little at first, being that princesses are not taught very much about riding gear and the like, but I quickly learned how to oil and repair the tack and check hoofs for cracking and stones. I brushed each horse until it gleamed, and I began to have repeat customers who claimed the only return to the inn so their horses could receive my special care. After my second winter in Brennus, Elma and I were gathering berries when I saw my reflection in a clear pool. At first, I did not recognize myself, for my ears now came to a point, and my eyebrows shared the same gentle slant. I turned to Elma and asked her what was happening to me. "This realm is full of magic," she replied with a knowing smile. "It's trying to protect you by making you look like one of us." I shuddered and turned away from the pool. "In my experience, nothing good comes of magic," I replied. "It has caused me nothing but pain." She patted my arm and said, "Now then, all magic isn't bad. Just some of the people who use it. Mark my words. A time will come where you'll appreciate it." I doubted her, and as I returned her smile, I hoped magic would not find me again. Alright, that is the end of chapter 1. I'm not going to take this mask off. I am going to let it soak in. I am going to move on to chapter 2. So you will see me in another video, and I will see you here in a second. But again, this is a collaboration with the Beauty Ninjas, as are all Mask Mondays. I will have them linked in the description box below. Go check them out, see what they have going on for their Mask Mondays. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. All that fun stuff is below. Let me know. Did you enjoy this? Am I any good at this? Should I stop? All comments are welcome, okay? Let me know. So I hope every single one of you has an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you all next time. Bye.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the